Today we're going to look at how to embellish your slow stitch samplers with beads. Hi everyone, my name's Sarah. Welcome to my channel, Sarah Homfray Embroidery. We are working on our samplers today. If you don't know what this project is, you can check that out up this corner. It's not too late to join in. We're just going to try lots of different stitches. We're going to do them in a slow stitch kind of a way and just build up a little piece full of lots of different stitches to try. So today we are embellishing them and we are going to look at using beads. So we've done quite a few videos on how to use beads in your embroidery, and we'll put them all in a playlist and that will be up at the end of this video. So if you want to know more about beads and you think these look really nice, you can go and check that one out there. But I'm just going to go through the basics of putting beads down and check those out if you want lots more information. But they come in lots of different shapes and sizes. So I'm just going to show you a few. These ones are the most common. So these are seed beads. Tiny little seeds come in lots of different sizes. Then we've got bugle beads. So they're long ones. I'm going to use some of those as well. You can get them that are square. You can get little teardrop ones. The hole goes across the middle with that one. You can get these beautiful crystal ones. These are gorgeous faceted crystals. There's little flat donut ones, different colour on one side to the other. We've got ones that are two-tone, so two different colours. They're sort of like little crystals, but in two colours, and they're a little bit transparent. And then we've got ones that are kind of natural stones that are all different shapes and sizes. Those are really beautiful. You can get really mad wacky ones with points on them and the hole goes through the top. There are loads and loads more. That's just a little selection of them, but the one thing that they all have in common is they've all got a hole through them, which means that we can sew them down onto our stitching. So as I did for the sequin video, I've made up some packs of beads, the beads that I'm going to use in this video. So if you want to have a go at them on your slow stitching, you don't have a stash of beads, then you can go and check those out in the shop. Got all these different colour sets here of the two types of beads. We're going to use the seed beads and the bugle beads. You can see the link for the shop in the description below this video below. Getting quick because once they're gone, they're gone. I don't have any more. So if you want to have a go on your slow stitching, there are some beads there for you. So I'm going to demonstrate with these seed beads and bugle beads. As I said, I've got some different colours going on here, and I just want to mention the thread. I'm going to use a Gutterman sew-all thread, so a good quality sewing thread. Doesn't have to be a Gutterman one, so I'm going to use that. You can use an invisible thread. I mentioned that for the sequins as well. That means you don't have to change the colour of thread. So if you change your beads colour, you don't need to change the thread colour, because I'm going to match my thread to my beads. So you can try the invisible one if you like. A little bit harder to use that one. It goes a bit springy, so it takes a bit of practice. So I'm going to use this one. And then what I'm going to do for beads is I'm actually going to double my thread like so. So I put it in the needle and I pulled it to length, so they're the same length, and then I'm going to use those two together. It's much stronger to put the beads down. Most beads are made out of glass, and if you zoom in on them, they are actually quite sharp. They will cut through your thread, so it's a good idea to coat your thread as well in some beeswax. So I've got a little bit there. Just going to lay it on the top. Let's do it that way and run it through. So you've got the double strength of two threads rather than one, and then I've just coated it with the beeswax, and that will just make it sort of slide through the beads much more easily. It won't wear on the thread so much. So if you've got some beeswax, that's good. If you haven't, a candle will work as well. Just coat your thread in some sort of conditioner so it doesn't break when you put the beads down. I'm going to show you a few different ways to put them down, and then at the end I've got some pieces with some beads on, so you can see how you can incorporate them in your other projects as well. So we're just going to go super simple to start off with. I put a knot in the end of my thread. I'm just going to start with a seed bead. So I thread on my bead straight to the bottom. Tie that down, and then needle goes down the other side of the bead, so it's going up, through and down. And because we've got two threads on there, that's nice and secure. If I want to put a couple on, I can put a couple on. Let's change the colour. So I've threaded two on together, slide them to the bottom of the thread, lay them down, needle goes down at the end of the beads. You can put one of those long bugle ones on. So they're just a long tube with a hole in the middle, so I can just put that on in the same way. Lie that one down, needle goes down at the end. Needle goes straight down, you don't need any angles for this. And then you can mix them up as well. You can put them on together. So I can put a seed bead on and a bugle bead. Let's pick a different colour. Let's just put a green one on. So you can mix your beads up as well. And you can put them down like that. So that's putting them down individually. So if you wanted to pick out a little area and put some odd beads down, it's as simple as that. So we put them down singly, but we can put them down in a row as well. So I'm going to put them, still stitch them down singly, but stitch them in a row. That makes sense. So I'm threading it on. I'm going to go the other way this time. So needle goes down at the end. So I'm going to do a row of back stitch with a bead on each time. So then coming back there. So that will be the distance of the bead. So that will be the width of the bead. That will fit in there, thread that on, goes to the bottom, needle goes down at the end of the previous row, so that's our back stitch. And we can make this little row of stitches. So I'm just going to put a couple of those on. I just want to mention needles at this point. You'll need a needle that's going to go through the eye of the hole in the bead. So that's quite a small needle, so just check it beforehand. I'm using a number 10 embroidery needle for these seed beads, but you get different size seed beads, so you will need to just try your needle out to see what works for you. And you can see how I'm just using a tool to help me lay those threads in place. I've got 2 threads in the needle. The tension of them can just separate out, so you don't need a special laying tool. You can just use a very large tapestry needle. So back stitch, so come up ahead of myself, put the bead on, and I work backwards, and then you can add different kind of bead in there. You need to just check the length first, because you need to come up in the right place. If I come up there, thread that on, down to the bottom, lay it in place, and back stitch into the end of that previous stitch. Just going to use that to control that down. Like so. This is a really strong way of sewing beads down. If you want to sew on to clothing, this is a really good way of doing it. It's really secure. You don't want your beads falling off. And then we can have a row of beads, and each one is sewn down individually, really strong, really secure. So another way of putting a row of beads down is to put them all on together and then to sew over them, to couch over them. This is a really quick way, and great if you're going around a sort of a shape and you want to make the shape a nice shape. So I'm just going to sew lots on together. See, I threaded all of those on. Let's put a couple more on. So I'm going to lie all of those down. So, and I go down at the end of all of them. Now, if you just leave them like that, I'll show you what happens. They're a little bit loose. They move around, they could catch on something and they can fall off. So we're just going to sew over that. I'm going to use the same thread that I've just used. I'm going to come up in between each bead, go over the top and down the other side of that thread that's gone through the middle. So I'm just couching over the thread in between each bead. So out from the top. If you angle the needle, look how my needle's going in there. You might just want to guide that, make sure it goes between the beads. So I'm just got one thread through the bead, and then I'm stitching over that thread that's gone through the middle. And I suggest you do all of them. If you've got loads, you could miss the odd one, but it's much more secure if you go over between each bead. But that just means you can put a whole row of them on. So if you want to work out a combination of beads beforehand, you could do that. It's a little bit quicker than it is doing the back stitch and sewing them on individually. Just do the last 2 stitches so you can see how secure that is. Last one. Like so, really solid piece of stitching, really nice and secure, and a nice even row of beads. I'm just going to show you how to finish your thread on the back, because it's really important this is secure so the beads don't all fall off. So I'm going to just take a little bit of that fabric. I've got a backing fabric on here, so that's really useful in this instance. I can just take a little bit of that fabric. I'm going to go over a couple of times. That's how we'd normally finish a thread, but for beads I'm going to go another one because I really don't want these to fall off. And then that makes a little loop, and I just put the needle through the loop and I pull that tight. It's kind of knotted it, and then I go once more under there, and then I can just cut that off and that's nice and secure. So a few extra stitches for your beads just to make sure they don't come off. Okay, so let's do another couple of really fun things with these beads that you can try. So I'm going to make a little loop out of them. So I'm going to thread on 5. Do as many as you like because you'll see what happens in a second. So I threaded on 5 beads all the way to the bottom. Then I go back down where I came up, more or less, doesn't have to be exact. And then if I pull slowly, it's a cute little loop of beads which you can either leave standing like that and add some texture to your projects, or if you want to just lie down and couch over it like we did with that row of beads, you can do that. Let's just flatten that down. And just stitch between them. Just a couple of stitches will hold this in place. So that's quite fun. You can put more on and have a big loop. You could put a different bead in the middle of the loop. I'll show you some of that in a second. And these are quite good fun. We can put on a bugle bead, put on a seed bead. We're going to make this stand up, so I'm going to miss out the seed bead. I'm going to go back down the bugle bead straight through the fabric, and that will just hold that on the end. And then you get these little beads sticking up. If you wanted to do like a sea theme, like sort of coral or something, this would be absolutely brilliant for that. Let's do one the other way around. So bugle bead and a seed bead. Miss out the seed bead, back down the bugle bead through the fabric, pull it tight, and that seed bead holds the beads on in place. And they stick up, so that's quite good fun. And then I'll just show you one more thing that you can do with these long ones. These bugle beads is we can put them down flat and we can make patterns with them. So I'm just going to lay them flat and we can sort of do like a satin stitch with them. I'm just going to put them next to each other. But you can see how I'm putting them down, always the same. Put the bead to the end of the thread. Go down at the end of the bead. And we can do these little groups of satin stitch. And you can fill in a space, you can make patterns with it. So you can get some quite solid stitching as well. And then if you wanted to, you could go the other way and do a little block the other way as well. Okay, so that's just a few ways you can put beads down. Let's have a look at some samples and see what else you can do with them. So if you're doing the version of this sampler that we're doing in our hand, and I've got mine on a little roller, I'll just show you those beads on that as well. So here is the single beads that we put down, and then in rows and then been couched over. There's some single bugle beads there. It's popped down here, made a little flower out of it, so you can mix the beads up. They look really nice if you use them together and use different sizes. Put the bugle beads down, the seed beads, and then just a bigger one in the centre there to make like a little flower head. These are some of the ones I've done the satin stitch with. They're really textural. I love the texture of them, especially with the other threads and fabrics as well. Really nice. So just put a couple of sets of those down together, some little satin stitch beads there. We've got more rows here, the single ones, and putting them down together to the back stitch there, so making a row of them in the back stitch. I have got a few here with the sequins. We covered that in the video on how to put sequins down, so if you want to know how to put beads down with sequins, do go and check that video out. That's in the sampler playlist, you can see that one. So just put that in the corners, and then I've got some bugle beads here on the leaves of these roses, so you can use what's on your fabric to inform how you want to put your beads down. It's a really nice way of decorating your fabric. I showed this one in a recent video on things to make out of your embroideries, but this was a little bit of sampling I did just to try some beads and stitches out. So you can use your normal embroidery stitches and put beads in with them. We've got a couple of videos on how to do that with lots of different stitches. That will be in the playlist at the end. But just to show you what you can do, you can mix your colours up, you can mix your beads up, you can add them into your stitches, you can do little groups of them, you can make little flowers. There's so many things you can do with them just to add them to enhance your stitching. You can do lettering with them. This is another video that we have got as well. So you can do solid shapes. You can just really fill a shape in with the beads, pack them in nice and tightly. Or you can just do single rows of it and do your lettering. So that would be threading it on and couching over it, that technique that I showed you. And then I went into French knots as well to give a bit of a texture. And you can see how different shapes they come in. There's a lovely little butterfly bead as well, so have a little look around and see what you can find. Here's a few more that I've done with different stitches, so just starting nice and simple with a back stitch and put a bead on it, and then a row of beads, and then some more back stitch with different beads on, and then we go into lots of different stitches, rows of, got chain stitch, we've got a fly stitch, that's a really nice one, and some star stitches down here and some buttonhole stitches, lots of different stitches you can add them into, and they look really, really beautiful. This little bag is a project that's on the YouTube channel, quite an old project now, but really nice one. And look at those beads there, just with that stitching, make that beautiful mandala. So really nice to mix with your stitches again. You can just add a few of them into your project, just here and there, just add a little bit of sparkle. If you put too much on, it can be like a bit blingy. I'll show you that one. That one's coming up, but you can just enhance them, just a little bit of detail. Bringing it makes a really nice texture, just adds that little bit of sparkle to it as well. There's a video on the hearts as well if you want to make some hearts. This is a really blingy one. So this is our video on lots of different ways to put beads down. It's a really comprehensive video. That's if you really think you might like beads, do check this one out, because there's loads of different things you can do with it. You can see how I've mixed my square beads up with my seed beads. We've got a little bit of sort of shading with the bugle beads, kind of Jacobean type design here. This is the one with the circles that we did, and I put one of those crystals in the middle of it. So loads of different techniques in that one. That is purely stitching with beads, no embroidery stitches in that one, just stitching with beads. If you want something really blingy, this is the one for you. If you were doing like a wedding dress or something, this would be fantastic for that. So do check that out for all of these different techniques. And this little sampler came out in that sequin video that I did. This is the one I did on my apprenticeship to try out lots of different techniques. So you can see the ones that we've done. The single beads, the beads in groups, the backstitch beads, the couching. Done a little motif here with the different beads, putting that large one in the middle, doing the loop around it, mixing up my seed beads and my bugle beads. Here's the satin stitch with the beads. You can make these little motifs, they're really nice. Did a whole flower scene using the beads and the sequins, and different size beads and these different shapes and colours will suggest different flowers, so you can have a lot of fun with sourcing your beads. I have rather too many beads really, but I do love my beads. So these are the ones that stand upright with the big beads on the end, and then I've got some here. It's a little bit of mad thing going on here. So these are the loops that I showed you. Instead of stitching them down, I did a row of them, and that makes a wonderful texture. That one's really good. And then I did loops with bugle beads, and let's just line one of those down, and the seed beads on the end, and just did a row of those to get wonderful texture with it. So you can just add a bit of detail, just a subtle bit of detail. You can go mad and really bling it up, and you can do lots of texture. So many things you can do with beads, well worth exploring in all of your embroidery projects. So this is the playlist that I mentioned up here with lots of videos on how to put beads down and different ideas. Check that one out if you want to add a bit of sparkle to your work. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up if you have, and I'll see you next time.